On August 11, 2021, police dispatchers received a very interesting call. It was from a woman in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, who said that her relative, Donald, told her he kept a corpse in one of his beds and had a decapitated head in his freezer. The woman said she was worried about Donald's mental and emotional state, so she asked the dispatchers to send officers out for a welfare check. At 8:51 that morning, one police officer pulled up to the dude's home at 202 West Strawberry Street. Before the cop went up to Donald's doorstep, he talked to the woman who reported the incident to gather a bit more information. He was probably like, "So you think there's what in the freezer?" And she was like, "A human head." Anyway, this woman told the officer she was just at Donald's home, where he told her all about the body and severed head. She apparently caught a glimpse of what was in the freezer and believed it was Donald's dad's head. With that information, the officer walked up to Donald's porch and knocked on the door. I would be terrified out of my mind. Donald opened the door, and I'm not exactly sure how the conversation went down, but the next thing the reports say, Donald welcomed the cop into his home and led him to the kitchen. From there, he opened the freezer and pulled out a literal human head. Dang, he got straight to the chase. I'm guessing the officer just stood there and stared for a hot second like... And once he finally gathered the courage to do anything, he immediately called for backup and started to secure the scene. More police officers and special detectives from the Criminal Investigation Division started to trickle in and began a thorough investigation. The Lancaster police chief told reporters, "You can't imagine running into something like this. Obviously, it's a traumatic experience for anyone to experience, including police officers. So yeah, it's a horrific scene." For real. I bet those officers didn't sleep for weeks. While the investigation was well underway, Donald was put in cuffs and transported to the Lancaster City Police Station for questioning. He told detectives that he found a cadaver doll in his dad's room that looked and sounded just like his dad. Hint, it was his dad. He said he jabbed the doll 2 or 3 times with a blade before cutting it into pieces with a 3-foot saw. I wonder if at any point Donald thought, there's red vital fluid coming out of this doll. That's strange. But probably not, because he just kept going, seemingly unfazed. The next step for Donald was to put his dad's arms, legs, and head in a huge trash bag in the basement. In another trash bag, he put the torso and used a dolly to take it out to his 2007 Lincoln Town car that was parked outside. But the next day, Donald opened the trash bag in the basement, took out his dad's head, and put it in the freezer. And he kept it in there on a white dinner plate. That's the detail that freaks me out the most. Why did he put it on a plate like that? Was he gonna eat it or bring it out on the table for company during dinner? What's this guy's deal? It's not reported that Donald ever did anything with the other body parts in the bags, but based on the fact that he kept the head in the freezer, I'm guessing those trash bags just sat in the basement and the car. I'm sure that smelled delicious. The following day, an autopsy was performed on the body parts, where medical examiners determined they belonged to Donald's 67-year-old father, Donald Meshey Jr. There were puncture wounds on the body that confirmed Donald's story. Yeah, if there's one good thing about Donald, it's that he was extremely honest. There was no mention of the alleged body in the bed that Donald's female relative told police about, so I'm gonna assume that part was either made up, the body was disposed of, or maybe Donald moved his dad's arms and legs from the basement to a bed. Who knows with this guy? After his confession, Donald was charged with criminal homicide, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with or fabricating physical evidence. His preliminary hearing date is still pending, but it seems like Donald will take the guilty plea and be thrown in jail for good. This isn't Donald's first run-in with the law, though. In 2019, he pleaded guilty to criminal mischief for damaging property. What did he do, you ask? Drove straight through the gate at a transportation center in Delaware County and left the scene. In April of 2021, he admitted to attacking a trucker at a Pepsi warehouse and was charged for harassment. Donald said he only attacked the man because he pushed him first, but Donald was also charged in May for shoving his sister into some boxes, so the whole violence thing seemed to be a trend for the guy. Instead of being thrown in jail or fined, Donald opted for an alternate sentence of attending 6 or more counseling sessions for anger management. Donald, however, never followed through with the counseling sessions, so he ended up just paying the fines instead. Yo, I don't understand how this man wasn't subjected to mental testing or put on watch or something. It's crazy to me that Donald proved himself to be an unstable and dangerous person, and the cops were okay with letting him off the hook like that. But then again, I'm sure they didn't think his next move was to chop his dad's head off and put it on a plate. As wild as this case is, there was a very similar one that took place 2 years earlier in England. Believe it or not, this one is even crazier than Donald's story. So on the morning of December 19th, 2019, a very hungover 47-year-old Philip Tarver walked downstairs wearing a woman's nightgown. Whew, what a loaded sentence. He unplugged a bunch of random cords from behind the TV and then went back upstairs. At the time, he was living with his 86-year-old mom, Angela, and his 84-year-old dad, Colin. Colin noticed his son's peculiar behavior and decided to confront him. He was also mad because he and Angela planned to watch Bargain Hunt on the TV that morning. So Colin yelled at Philip, who stormed off into the kitchen. Little old Angela was sitting there enjoying her morning cup of tea when her son burst in. As Colin plugged in the TV, he heard his wife let out a gut-wrenching scream. He rushed to the kitchen, but it was too late. Angela was lying on her back on the floor, covered in vital fluid. Someone had pushed her over in her chair and punctured her chest multiple times. Can you guess who that someone was? Yep, it was Philip. When Colin looked up, he saw his son staring at him with yellow eyes and a 12-inch decorative sword in hand. I repeat, a sword. Colin said Philip looked very strange and demented. Something was clearly very wrong with his son. After a short stare-off, Philip opened his mouth and said, "I've got to kill you." Whoa. Nobody said you had to do anything. Colin and Philip got into a fight, and miraculously, the 84-year-old dad won. Well, I don't know if it was really a win for Colin, considering his wife was just slain by his son, but he was able to get the sword out of Philip's hands. Colin bolted outside and dialed 999, which is the UK version of 911. Police officers rushed to the scene and drew their firearms. Philip came to the front door holding a blade and waving a small Union Jack flag saying, "I surrender, I surrender." Wait, is Philip into LARPing? Seems like he may have been into that sort of thing and just got too carried away. With Philip detained, the cops went inside to assess the damage. They found Angela's head in an Angry Birds box in the freezer and her left ring finger in the kettle. Wait, I wonder how the detectives even found the finger and head. Who would think to look in a kettle? Anyway, the investigators determined that after Colin ran outside to call 999, Philip grabbed a kitchen blade to decapitate his mother and hack off her finger. I feel like the selection of the finger had to be intentional, right? Philip had to be sending some sort of demented message to someone. Maybe his dad? And I'm sure some of you are thinking Philip must have been battling with a mental illness of sorts, and I thought the same thing too. But after a thorough psychiatric evaluation, professionals deemed he was at least mentally fit to stand trial. No insanity plea for you, Philip. When Philip first spoke with the police, he admitted to the crime and said, "I am sorry for killing her. Fucking hell, I must repent for my sins." But when the time came for his trial, he took back that confession and decided to blame his dad for the crime. OMG, this boy has no respect for his father. Like, it's one thing to threaten his life and snuff his wife, but now Philip was trying to frame him for everything? That karma is gonna hurt like hell. The judge didn't buy Philip's claims, and she sentenced him to life in prison with the opportunity for parole 19 years in. She told Philip he has spoken of the additional suffering this has caused him, saying in the course of the trial, every aspect of his life and home has been laid bare for all to see. Your mother was particularly vulnerable. She was frail, elderly, had limited speech and limited mobility. You dismembered her body. Poor Colin was absolutely heartbroken and distraught. In a matter of one day, his whole family was ripped apart. He and Angela also had 2 other kids, but one of them passed away in 1991. My God, that poor family just seemed cursed from the beginning. Colin later said, "I have lost my best friend and the love of my life. She was the light of my life, and now the light has gone out, cruelly extinguished." Ugh, that's so tragic. He wants Angela to be remembered as the devoted wife and grandmother she was. She suffered a stroke in 1991, which limited her physical and mental abilities over the years. At the time of her demise, she had severe speech difficulties and was using a walker, which is probably why she wasn't able to put up a fight against Philip. Even still, Angela had the best outlook on life and was determined to live her life to the fullest. From what I could gather, she and Colin seemed to be good parents to their children, so it's unclear what spurred Philip's rampage that day. Just 3 years away from his 50th birthday, Philip still lived with his parents. And I'm not trying to shade people who live with their parents, but Philip's situation was quite different. Although he went to college, Philip only worked a few jobs as a delivery driver before essentially retiring early and mooching off of his parents. Philip claimed to have dreams of becoming a songwriter, but never found success in that career field, and was most often described as a jobless watchmaker and scrounger whose sole income was the spending money his parents gave him. At his trial, the judge told Philip, "You have not worked since January 2017. You were never married, you lived with your parents nearly all your life, your mother bought your car, your father paid the running costs, you watched TV, played computer games, and drank alcohol. You did not go to bed until 5 a.m. and sometimes not until 8 a.m. when your father was getting up." The night before the crime, it was reported that Philip had his dad buy him a bottle of vodka and a 6-pack of beers. He drank way too much, which describes why he was so messed up the following morning. But it definitely doesn't describe why he executed his mom. Yes, he was hungover and on substances, and it's possible that he had an undiagnosed mental illness, but that doesn't make up for the fact that he robbed his mother of her life and tried to do the same to her dad. A more obscure theory is that he was super into live-action roleplay or watching Game of Thrones, and based on how isolated he seemed from the outside world, maybe Philip couldn't tell the difference between what was real and what was fake? Or maybe his parents were abusive and no one knew about it. That's a pretty common motive for people who whack their parents. Actually, Philip's brother seemed to have issues of his own too. Just one day after Philip was sentenced to life in prison, his older brother Rick was convicted of a domestic violence offense. He was found guilty of battering a woman and had to pay a fine, but wasn't sentenced to any jail time. Man, I was joking about the family being cursed, but now I'm starting to really think that's the case. Okay, but today's episode is all about freezer talk. Now that you've heard the details about these 2 cases, let's talk about their similarities and differences. Both men whacked one of their parents, stuffed their heads in freezers, and sectioned off their bodies. They also both seem to have a distorted sense of reality. With Donald, he confused his dad with a doll. With Philip, he seemed straight up delusional. As for the differences, Donald confessed to his crimes, and Philip took his confession back. Philip was intoxicated and high, while Donald's state is unknown to the public. Philip put his mother's finger in a kettle. Donald put his dad's torso in his car. And last but certainly not least, Donald put his mom's head in an Angry Birds box, whereas Philip put his dad's head on a plate. Now, there are plenty of other differences, but those are the major ones that stuck out to me. And they continued to baffle psychologists, detectives, and true crime fans everywhere, especially when it comes to the topic of the criminal psyche. AKA, what the f*** were these dudes thinking when they froze their parents' heads? Let me know what you thought about these cases. See you next time!